Before we begin, want to learn more about Power BI and Fabric? Visit prag.works/Manuel40 to get a 40% discount on one of our annual learning subscriptions to over 100 courses. Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Manuel Quintana. Of course, we're here with Pragmatic Works, a training manager here. And today, in this video, we're going to be talking about something pretty darn exciting. Specifically, we're going to be moving into the realm of the Power BI report builder. Sometimes it's a little more easy to kind of think about it as just paginated reports, right? But specifically, the Power BI report builder has recently had a preview feature brought into the mix. The ability of leveraging a get data button in paginated reports. This is huge. For those who've been working with paginated reports, or even if you want to go even further back in time with naming conventions, SSRS reports, right? For the most part, the report builder has been relatively unchanged since pretty much like 2016. Like this has been around for a very long time. The structure and the design on how we connect to data and how we use it in these paginated reports has been pretty much the same for quite a bit of time. Naturally, of course, when this was changed and kind of naturally adopted to the Power BI service, right, that became a feature, initially only available for premium, but now we can all take advantage of it in Power BI itself. We had some new connections made available more recently, of course, the ability of connecting to things within one lake itself, so your lake houses, your warehouses, your semantic models. So those small things and some UI stuff sure has been changed. Honestly, probably the biggest adjustment there was probably the ability to connect to Power BI datasets when that was introduced. But still, that's just a new source. This is big, right? This is us adding in a transformative layer into actual paginated reports, which is incredible. And not only that, of course, an additional amount of connectors that we can lean into here. This is truly amazing. The one thing to remember, though, is at the time of this recording, this is fresh off the press. This is just a couple of weeks ago announced as preview. I'll talk about some of the limitations, right? It's definitely something that we're just kind of talking about here to bring it to your attention. So you know it's something that has just been brought about that you should be keeping your eye on because it is very, very interesting and it's going to change some things when it comes to how we design our paginated reports. It's going to really add some quality of life stuff. So this is what this video is all about, just to bring you to awareness. And of course, I will have some follow-up videos as this feature kind of updates and as new additional things come into play, as some of these limitations are removed. I'm going to be trying to keep you up to date with what's going on with this Power Query introduction for our Power BI report builders. Just amazing stuff. Love it, love it, love it. So just in case though, right? This is, obviously for those working with Power BI, people who are in paginated reports, you know that word Power Query. You know the Power Query editor. But just in case, if you're coming here and you're unfamiliar with it, maybe you used to do SSRS and you're trying to move over and like, well, I don't know this Power Query. What do you speak of, right? It's this fantastic UI. It's this experience that we can now have. Traditionally, we find this in things like Power BI, Data Flows Gen 2. You do have this in Analysis Services Tabular. I think it's version 2016 and above, right? This is in quite a few different places here. Generally more commonly and popularly known in any of those Power BI spaces that I was describing. But it gives us this ability. It's a transformative language, right? Known as the M query language, right? This is a little picture you're seeing in front of you just here, but it has and uses what's called the mashup query language. So when we see this, right, when we go into the features of the actual Power BI report builder, we look at a paginated report, we're going to see that it has terminology here like edit mashup. Like that's how we can go in and go back to change this stuff. So it's based off of the mashup query language, the M query language. It's dynamic. It's fantastic. There's great IntelliSense. The readability, it's like anything. It's a language. So sometimes if you want to start learning how to customize it, it's got its own little learning curve. We have some additional content out around that. But that won't be the focus of today. We're going to really focus in on the UI component. Yes, Power Query leverages the M query language, but it's a UI-driven experience, right? We're going to see buttons and options, and you can click on it. At the end of the day, our selections are generating that code for us. But just wanted to make sure you're aware of what the name of that language is in the background, and you actually could go in and do some customization should you want. It's a bit more advanced. A lot of times, what the UI offers us is gonna be enough. So M is that language. Remember that, right? If you ever have like a trivia night for business intelligence. So what we're gonna see now are various different transformational options within the paginated report, right? Before we could make connections, of course, bring in a data set, you had, if you're doing Azure SQL database, you got your relational query designer using kind of the SQL. It could auto-detect relationships. If you're doing analysis services, you have the analysis services query designer, but not really anything from a transformational perspective. But now we make these connections. We bring that data into the Power Query Editor. We can make adjustments, remove columns, add columns, combine data sets together. Just a ton of different options. This is just a drop in the bucket of what's available to us within that Power Query Editor, but this is now all available to us inside of Paginated Reports, which is fantastic, right? So just a couple of GUI driven things. We can do sorting, we can do filtering of data, right? Of course, naturally, the concept of parameterization is still ever present inside of Paginated Reports. So as a follow-up to this video, of course, we'll go deeper and look at other things, and I'll have definitely a video specifically for parameterization, as that obviously has to be handled a specific way with this. But it is there. You can just filter the data, but a lot of times you're going to leverage the filtering probably alongside parameters. Pretty standard. That kind of design practice doesn't really change when it comes to the world of Paginated Reports, but it's here. It's in Power Query. We can still leverage all that stuff, which is fantastic. So we have transformations, we have merging operations, appending, merging, kind of classical joins in SQL. There's even combined files. We're not really going to go through an example of that in this one, but we have tons of content out there that talks about the Power Query Editor, right? We have videos already out there. We have classes on our on-demand learning platform which cover this, whether it be through tabular analysis services or more commonly through things like Power BI and data flows. If you're taking and learning and doing any of these stuff where you're working with the Power Query Editor in those environments, that's the same experience you're going to have here in Paginated, which is awesome, right? It's transferable skill sets. So that's what we're going to see here. We're going to talk about the impact of it. Of course, as I mentioned, this is still in preview. So many things could absolutely change here. There are some limitations in play. I fully expect those to, of course, as this starts to mature a bit more and before it becomes generally available, some of those limitations do go away, and we'll discuss those, right? But on top of having this great transformative capability now available to us within Paginated Reports, right, in that Power Query, in that Power BI report builder, we also now have so many more options for sources. And you're going to see some of the sources in here that are available like traditionally, right? When we go to that data, the data ribbon where we have all those choices, Synapse, SQLDB, all that stuff is still there. But you'll notice, in the screenshot, we might not see it immediately. I see it actually on the screen real quick. There is Azure SQL database, right? We see right here. This is a real screenshot from the Power BI report builder that's showing Azure SQL DB here. But there's also an option just to connect Azure DB. So the classical experience of connecting using the standard method for connection still exists. You could click Azure SQL database. It's going to give you that relational query designer. You can, of course, do grouping, aggregations, aliasing, all that stuff. That UI experience still exists. But if you need to do some additional transformational logic, or, which is a very common thing, maybe combine that data from your SQL database with something from another source, this is going to be a big thing. That's going to be the focus of the demonstration we're going to see. That's going to make life easier when it comes to the expression language. And if you've been working with Paginated, if you've been working with SSRS, all that fun stuff, you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the lookup and the lookup set functions, right? These are fantastic. They gave us great capability in Paginated. But sometimes, it'd be nice if we didn't have to dip into that realm. You got some limitations from formatting when you have to start using those inside of your tablexes. There's things that come along with it. But if we had them all in one data set, which is usually a very kind of a direction that we try to go towards, we try to curate our kind of master data set with everything we need. That just makes it so much easier to work with our visualization options in Paginated Reports. That's the best, but doesn't always accomplish tables and information from different sources. So we have to lean into those lookup or lookup set functions, those expressions that we have available to us. Well, this is kind of going to eliminate that. And that's what we're going to be talking about here. So it's really exciting. And that is what we're going to dive into here within this demonstration. So what I'm going to do is first back out of the PowerPoint for a moment here, right? We're going to go ahead and this is the documentation. You can find it if you just search, Power Query with Power BI report builder. You'll come to this same article. It's always good to check this stuff out from a blog perspective, right? So that you can stay up to date. Because I said it's very fresh, very new. And then, like I said, at the very bottom, there's a section here. If we kind of scroll down, there's a section here that's somewhat limited. It's talking about the most important, but there's a section, a few notes. Currently not available for those government tenants, and then some small limitations. I'll talk about these and showcase it to you in the demonstration itself. And you can see it also mentions we don't support gateway connections, stuff like that. So kind of connecting to local on-prem at the moment, not supported. But once again, I suspect that things like the gateway support, that will be available eventually, so we can expect that. Also, we'll talk about something about privacy levels, which is currently another small kind of limitation we're seeing inside there. Really depends on what sources you're using, but it's important to note. But there is a link here that you can always click on if you want to always go to the current limitations. It takes you here. It's just another link. You can find this on Google, any search browser. It has all the limitations listed here. And as mentioned, I'll discuss some of these within the demonstration that we're going to be going through. So that's there, that's available. Let me show you the initial report. I did have something just to remind us about kind of for the example we're going to do, what this is going to really help us with. So if we look, a very simple report here in which I have actually two data sources, right? If we kind of zoom in, we can see we've got Azure SQL Database, we have Power BI Semantic Model, so that's what I'm connecting to. I have one table existing in one source and another table existing in another. And don't worry, the files, right? We have a couple CSVs that we provided to you for download here. We're going to be using those in a moment, right? So we are going to start from scratch and see how that works. I just wanted to give you this and replace this with whatever it makes sense for your organization. You have some stuff in the Synapse Analytics. You got stuff in a data lake. You have stuff in Snowflake. You've got stuff in your Lakehouse. The idea is I've got one table here. I've got one table here. Traditionally, historically, in the past, when we had to do this, we would need to, of course, bring in two different data sets, which you see I have done. I have my subcategory table just here, and then here I have my product, which we know there is a relationship here with the product subcategory key. We can see both of those columns exist. So traditionally, we would go through, as you can see, I've created a table here, and within this table, it is bound. If we go to the properties, we can see when you go to the tablets itself, every one of these tablets is always bound to a specific data set, right? When we kind of go in and look at the actual data set itself, it's bound to this. You always are set to one data set. That is just how this has worked since the beginning of time, pretty much, right? So I want to have, and you can see I have 4 columns from this product data set here, and I wanted, of course, a subcategory column, which is coming from the table above, a different data source entirely. The method in which this needed to be accomplished, because that column is not going to be available in this list, since it's in a different data set, is we had to lean into the actual expression language. So if I go here, I'm just going to right click this and click on the expression option. We can remind ourselves of what this looks like. And I'll kind of format this a little bit better so we can see it, right? This is how we would have to write this, where we would have our first column, the column from the table itself. So this is the product subcategory key for my product table, comma, I want to do a lookup and find matches for the subcategory key coming from the subcategory table. And then, okay, when you find a match, what do you want to bring back? Well, I want to bring the subcategory name coming from the subcategory data set. So that's the design, right? This is there. This is nothing new. This has been around for the longest time. This is how we had to approach this. And it works. Right? If we go in and I just go ahead and hit run, we get our table, it's in there, it's showing our good stuff. This is how we're bringing 2 data sets into one visualization. Obviously, if all this was coming from SQL, that'd be easy. We could use the relational query designer, it'll create the join statement for us, and then we would have like one query that would have everything. Easy, easy, easy. Same thing if everything was coming from a semantic model, if everything was coming from a Synapse table, right? If you have all the data you need coming from one source, not an issue. But that's not always going to be the case. Very realistically, you'll have something over here in source A and something over here in source B. This is where this Power Query Editor is just going to shine. So let's go ahead. I'm actually going to open up a brand new report builder. So let's do that. I'm going to open up a blank one. I'll go ahead and close out this one here in the background just because it was just to kind of set up what we're going to accomplish here. And what we're going to use, right? We know we have these files. Let me bring this over. We have these files right here that have been provided to you, just the product CSV and the product subcategory. I'm going to do something a little bit extra for this demonstration. You don't need to necessarily follow exactly what I'm doing, but I wanted to kind of extend this and create a connection to one of these CSVs, which will be hosted in my OneDrive. That is definitely what each of you will want to do. That's kind of, everyone can do that. But my second one, subcategory, I've actually gone through the time. I've actually loaded this into a Lakehouse inside of one of my Power BI workspaces and actually created a table from this file itself. So I'm actually going to end up creating a connection to a Lakehouse table and then to a CSV in my OneDrive. That's what's going to end up being there. I'm going to bring them together. We're going to have one solitary data set that we're going to bring into the mix, which has all the data that we need. And it's going to be making working with tablets and other visuals so nice and easy because it's one data set. All the columns I have are in there. You're almost kind of just denormalizing everything, right? We're just kind of creating this nice denormalized table, which in this case, Paginated actually really likes. You know, if I can get away from using those lookup set, that's a win in my perspective, right? So first is first. If you wanted to, you can take these files and just load them into your OneDrive. The beautiful thing here is that we do have that option presented to us right through the actual tool itself. So if you wanted to, right, you're going to see, you could go into your OneDrive, create a directory, and then just upload these in here, and you'd be able to follow along perfectly fine. That is what I would recommend, as we're not going to take the time in this video to talk about how to create a Power BI workspace, how to create a Lakehouse, how to go ahead and upload the file, and how to create the table. I can tell you though, it's actually pretty easy to do, and definitely I would recommend, if the whole Fabric Lakehouse thing is intriguing, you're not certain, check out. We have some other videos out there that can show you how to go through that process. Otherwise, I would say just load both files up into OneDrive and connect to them that way. That'll serve that same purpose. That's the idea behind this demonstration. I have to, and you know, I've decided to choose a couple different sources, but literally this is the cool part. Your sources could be anything else. Once you get them into the Power Query Editor, they're basically in a semantic layer here, and we can do with them as we see fit, which is beautiful. So, like I said, if you want to go ahead and upload these into OneDrive, you can. The option that the report builder will provide us, you'll see, is there too, but it doesn't drop it in a directory, and you'll see what I mean here momentarily. So right away, once you've downloaded and installed the newest version of the Power BI Report Builder, under the Data tab, we find our new option, Get Data, aptly listed as being in preview. Not really certain on the roadmap and when that'll become GA. There's a couple of things that need to be worked through in the limitations though, but everything else remains the same, right? You know, yeah, all these, this has been here. This has been here for a bit, ever since Fabric and all that, you know, Lakehouse has been released since last year. It's all here. So you could just continue as normal. That's not a problem. But in my case, I'm going to go ahead and hit Get Data, which brings up the new UI. Well, I should say new UI in regards to the report builder, right? Because this is a user interface we're very familiar with when it comes to the Power BI service, when it comes to data flows, when it comes to Power BI, just desktop. We know this, right? And I'm going to go hit View More just so we can be wowed and realize, oh, this is so nice. Look how many sources I have now for Paginated Reports. Just this is enough. This is awesome. So we're going to go ahead and use the CSV connector, because there's an option, text VSE right here. The methods and means in which currently we have access to this is going to be using OneDrive. Whether later on, once the gateway connections are allowed, connecting to an on-premises file, very well may be an option. That's just an assumption of mine, but for now, we're connecting. And to be honest, when we're talking about CSVs and Excel, going the OneDrive route is going to be your best option, right? So it's saying, hey, give me a link to the file. And here's a nice little button, just browse OneDrive. Boom, boom, boom. It's that easy. But if you wanted to, you literally could hit this upload option, either browse or just drag and drop them. If you use this option though, you'll notice if you just drag and drop, it's or select it, it's just going to put these files kind of in the root directory of your OneDrive. So, you know, I kind of wanted to have a little more organization. So I went, created a directory in my OneDrive, and I uploaded the files there. I'm only gonna use one in my example, but both files I have uploaded into that location. So let's go ahead. I'm gonna hit browse. So I'm gonna go to link to file, browse my OneDrive, sign in and what account I want to log in with. So then it's gonna have a nice little pop-up here to just explore. Okay, we're in your OneDrive. Which files would you like? And we're gonna see right here at the top, I have a folder I created just for this. And you can see both files are in here. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and select the product CSV, right? I'm going to go ahead and highlight this. Technically, we could go and do both of these, not at the same time. We can go one at a time, but I could bring them both in this route, which is what I recommend if you're unfamiliar with Lakehouses. But for now, product CSV, select. Right? Creates a connection. You may be prompted once again to kind of supply your credentials, but once that's done, this connection will be saved as part of this application to make your life a little bit easier. So it's there, it's connected. So all I have to do is down here in the bottom right, hit that next button. It's making that connection. We're then going to get a preview of this data. You can see right here. And technically you can almost start doing some transformational logic because it's automatically understanding that it's a comma delimited file. But if this started looking really crazy, it wasn't having the right column headers, there wasn't the right separation. For instance, something like this, right? If you showed up and it's like, whoa, looking wild and crazy, and you know what that delimiter is, you can start making those decisions right now, actually. But it does a pretty good job with the preview to understand what the delimiter is, and it's done a good job here. So we'll continue on the bottom right-hand corner and hit Transform Data, which brings us right into the Power Creator itself. We can see on the left-hand side, I've got my product query. It effectively just took the default name of the file, but if we want to rename it, that's right here. Just rename it right there, product. Change it to whatever you want. Product's perfectly fine for me. What we're going to do is to kind of match that last example that we saw. I'm really not going to do too much like actual transformational work other than reducing the amount of columns I'm looking for, because the goal here is actually to combine the data together. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to do something kind of sneaky. So don't worry about what I'm doing here in a second. Actually, no, this is perfect. I'm going to go ahead and just remove quite a few columns. So I'm going to use the classic method of just choose columns. There's a whole UI thing, right? Like I said, any of our videos that talk about Power Queries, like there's multiple ways we can get rid of stuff. But I'm just going to hit the choose columns option. And for me, I'm going to stick with the product key, the product subcategory key. I'm going to go with the English product name, color, list price. That's it. Keep it nice, clean, and simple. Hit OK, and boom. We're already reducing some of these things. If you wanted to go on further and apply any sort of filtering logic here, it's absolutely available, right? Maybe I don't want to list any of these blank list prices. Do remember, or if you're new to Power Query, this is always working in a preview state. So it's like, oh, you only have blank values in here. No, if I hit load more, this will do basically a one-time in-memory lookup to show me what other values exist here. Because at the moment, if you look down here in the bottom left, it shows me we're looking at 100 rows. That's what this preview limitation is currently set at. So just be aware of that process. But I don't want to filter this. I want to keep all of my products, the entirety of this table intact, right? Some are blank. More than likely, they maybe have a finish tag of false, so just not finished. But I'm going to keep mine regardless if they have a list price or not. So that's what I'm going to maintain. But you have the choice. You can filter. Later on as well, once we go through the process of understanding how we can apply and do parameters, which is a very classic thing for Paginated Reports, you could present this as an option, maybe give your users the ability to filter by that if you like. We'll probably do something around color more than likely, and actually category, because that's what we're going to bring in here in a moment. So for now, nice and cleaned up. We got what we're looking for. But what about our second file? I know it's in OneDrive. If you want to go ahead and just make that connection again, you 100% can. But I'm going to mimic the idea as if I'm pulling from a different source, right? So once again, if you're unfamiliar with the process of creating and standing up a lakehouse, getting that file in there and creating a table, just go ahead and repeat what we've done. Go ahead and hit Get Data, text CSV, and just point to product subcategory and wait there. Because you can then, once you've brought it in, you're going to have the same data as we are. We can manipulate it in the same way. So if you want to do that, I, on the other hand, I'm going to go ahead and hit Get Data, get access to all of this good stuff once again. And then under that fabric selection, we have our lakehouse. So I've already have this connection here into my lakehouse. And you can see I'll kind of bring it up here in the background for you. We have it where I just, like I said, very simple lakehouse, basically dragged and dropped the file right into the file system here. And then from there, just dragged it, dropped it, and I have a table right here waiting to be leveraged, right? So that's what I'm going to be connecting to right now. So I'm going to go here, look for that workspace. I'll expand this, and it's going to show me all of the objects we have, which includes some system-related objects. But this one, product subcategory, get a little preview just to make sure. But this is what I'm looking for. Beautiful. Making my connection, and I'm hitting this, hitting create. I'm from a lakehouse. But at the end of the day, even if you connected using text, CSV, and OneDrive, we're going to end up looking exactly the same because we're now in this semantic layer. It's a beautiful thing. What we want at the end of the day is to take category and subcategory and just make it part of product. Once again, having a singular data set so that we can work more seamlessly along with the visualizations, the tablets is a big one, within Paginated Reports. So the idea is we want to use a combining data operation, right? We have product subcategory key right here. And in this table, we have product subcategory key as well. Right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something very specific here so you can also witness. I'll describe it as a limitation. It's described as such in the documentation. I just think it's a specificity of usability right now. It's how this works. But we've got two queries in here, right? Product and product subcategory. Well, if I click products and I hit merge queries, just the button as is, we're going to be merging product subcategory into this. So we'll still have two queries when this is done. It's just product will now contain basically all the relevant stuff I want from product subcategory. So we'll do that, right? Product is the top table, subcategory is the bottom, and we choose what the key columns are. So I choose product subcategory from the top, subcategory from the bottom, and we are going to leave this to a left outer join. I mentioned earlier on, the idea is that I want to keep all of my products. I don't want to lose any of my products from this table whatsoever. I was kind of describing that from the list price perspective, but same thing here. We're basically just doing a lookup. We're saying, hey, I want you to go product by product. If it has a product subcategory key, find that over in the product subcategory table and bring me back the category and the subcategory. And that's going to all appear for us. If it doesn't, it's just going to have blank values. And that is because we're going to leave it with the left outer. There's a bit more, it's good to have a good firm grasp and understanding of these join options. We're not going to go in depth on this video, but I mean, this is the same conversation we have with SQL. So if you even watch our SQL class when we talk about joins, it's the same conversation there. We cover this in some of our Power BI stuff as well. So I'm going to leave it to left outer, and I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. But wait, hold on now. Please allow combining data from multiple sources to view the results. So this is definitely not a limitation, but I left this option unchecked because it is the default, so you would see this, right? It's not going to really let us go through what we want to do well. You can see it's giving us some issues. So what I need to do is actually go to options, right? And under privacy, we're going to find the option here, allow combining data from multiple sources. Now, it sounds a little, this could expose sensitive or confidential data to an unauthorized person. Privacy levels is something that has existed within Power BI for a long time. That is what this is discussing. So we're discussing privacy levels. This is one of the small limitations as of right now. Within this user interface, we're not really given the opportunity to establish our privacy levels. So this will actually cause a limiting factor when we try to render this report here at the end. But that's what this is talking about, right? I imagine what's going to occur in one of these releases, because you can see now that I've enabled that, I can kind of go through and allow this combining data. And we now have the ability, like we normally would, say, okay, cool. That now the merge has occurred. Basically, we combine data from OneDrive and Lakehouse here. I want, if I hit this little expand button here in the upper right, I say I want to have my category and subcategory. So now what was my product table has all the pertinent and important stuff from the product subcategory as well. Granted, you can see these first ones here obviously don't have any subcategories, but I can promise you there's 100% values in this data set, right? We can go over here, get a little load more, and go through it. Let's make sure that this has actually got, okay, cool. We got those items. Actually, this is a pretty interesting one. You see how this right here came back and said null? And I did load more and nothing came back. I was a little surprised about that, right? So what's going on here? Here's the beautiful thing. We're in the Power Creator, so we can take this under uncontrol. Our merge occurred on this column and this column. What can you see the difference in? Data types, right? And here, subcategory key is a whole number. And over here, product is actually a text. And this is actually causing a little bit of an issue. So what are we going to do? Because we have this capability, is I'm going to go ahead. Now, you could like say, oh, well, we got to redo the merge. Sure, you could delete these steps here on the right-hand side. This query settings, just like in Power BI and data flows, has everything. But instead, what I'm going to do is actually just go right here, right? After we took the time to choose our columns. That's the name of the step. And I'm going to go ahead and data type change product subcategory from an ABC option, so a text. I'm going to switch that over to a whole number to match what is going on in my product subcategory table. Now, it gives me a little warning message. So if you're new to this, it's just simply saying, hey, you're making a change upstream here. You're making an adjustment. This adjustment could negatively impact other items downstream. In this case, it will not. It's actually going to help us. So I'm going to hit insert. And now, if I return back to the very bottom step here, where it's expanded, right? And I look once again at the list of my category values, there they are. So there was a small issue, and to resolve that issue, right? Realistically, we consider this, right? This is the product table, which was coming from the CSV directly. As you can imagine with CSVs, it doesn't have any established defined data types. So really, that's how it would have come in. We really needed, right? We needed this Power Query experience to remedy that. The other alternative would be I'd have to go to the Lakehouse and change my whole number key to a text over there. And that's really not what I'd want to do. So Power Query coming through again here. And now we've got it all combined. But here is something that you do need to be aware of, and it is indicated on the limitations. Like I said, I think this is more of a usability thing. We know the table that we're interested in, right? The one that we want, which we don't need to load this one into the mix here, But the table we're interested in is product, correct? And we can see this product has 7 columns. You can see the information on the bottom. The other one has only 4. So we have that there. We say, okay, I'm done. Product is my column, right? That's the table I want to use. That's my data set. Well, when we go ahead here and we hit create, what's going to happen is it says data set product subcategory created successfully. If you want to edit, click the edit mashup. We didn't want product subcategory, right? That's not needed anymore. We wanted product. The idea here is if we right click and go back to that mashup, brings us right back to where we were. You can only, when it comes to this mashup query experience that we have at the moment, the way this functions is whatever is the bottom-most query is what gets loaded in. So even if you have 6, 7, 8, 9 tables on this left-hand side, 9 queries, it'll only ever load in one of those as a data set, and it'll be whatever is the bottom, right? So what we can do, and you can see when I've come in here, it's kind of reminding me, hey, you're combining stuff together, please confirm your connection. So I'm just going to go ahead and square that away real quick. Get my Lakehouse. And then it's saying, are you sure you want to do this? Because we're merging stuff from different sources. Just so you're aware, where that will eventually be remedied, if you go over to Manage Connections, you'll see that we can make some editings, but unfortunately we don't have the opportunity to modify and establish a privacy level. Naturally, within these OneDrive files, there's nothing on the OneDrive side we can really go through, and on the Lakehouse side. So I believe later on we'll probably see an option when you hit edit right here. There'll be a drop down. Is it private? Is it organizational? Is it going to be public? Like, we'll have the classical privacy level options so that we can define those. That's what's prompting that message, and that's actually ultimately what's going to be limiting us from looking at this report once we try to render it, right? But now we've got it set, we got it there. We know if I want to bring in product, I can just bring it down here, and this will suffice. We can just go ahead now and hit create. The one thing that does occur here is because we already did this once and it created the data set, you'll notice that the name remains the same, product underscore subcategory, but it is completely the product table, right? We can see the 7 columns. So if you kind of make this mistake, all you'll need to do is right click and go to the dataset properties and just rename it accordingly, right? So I'm just going to call it product, what it would have been had I known this. Now that you know it, right, you'll make sure the table that you want to become the dataset is at the bottom. I just did that purposely so we could see that kind of experience. But now this is here, right? If I wanted to mimic that report, right, I could say, here's my product details. I could go ahead and just insert a table right in here. And there's only one dataset. So I think before we had product key, product subcategory key, obviously we could go into the data set and make some adjustments on the name. At this point, all your experience and exposure within Paginated Reports is there. I could go to fields. I could say, let me make this name a little bit better. Product name, maybe even just call the subcategory key. But the rest look pretty good. I'll leave it. But now it's, I think, a little bit more well labeled here. So product subcategory. Let's see here. It's a little bit of a long name there. Let me get rid of this for a moment. We'll go here, product subcategory. We'll just go product name. And then let's just add in 2 more here because we can see how easy this is, right? We'll do color, list price, and the new columns, right? That's the big thing. We brought these in so we could have category and subcategory. No need, that's the big thing, no need at all for using that expression language, which we would have had to use lookups and lookup sets if we had done this in 2 different data sets. Now we don't need to worry about it. It's all been consolidated. We actually use it for a little bit of cleanup. This is really just going to streamline what we're doing. Now, just in case, for full transparency, right, if we go here, now that it's all set up, and I hit run, we do run into a little bit of obstacle just because it's in these early stages and these preview stages. And you'll see what it's discussing, as I mentioned. It says information about a data source is required. Information is needed in order to combine data. Please specify a privacy level. And as mentioned, within the UI right now, we do not have the capability of doing that. So it is kind of stopping us at this juncture. But once again, this should be something that will be remedied pretty shortly in whenever the next release is. But overall, right, that's the idea around this. This is a monumental feature. Like I said, Paginated Reports, the report builder, hasn't changed in so long. So to see this come about is fantastic. So definitely keep your eyes on this. It is very early on. It's in a preview state, but trust me, this is going to be a game changer. I'm very excited to see this. And like I said, I think the small limitations we're seeing right now within it will definitely be gone here, probably not too far in the future, hopefully so. And then what I'll be doing is trying to keep you up to date with that. Of course, we were going to want to look at other things like, okay, now that we know the Power Query is in play, now that it's got its kind of own UI, how are we going to leverage things like parameters? So as mentioned, I will have a follow-up to this. Probably keep an eye a little bit more because naturally we're going to need to be able to render the report for this to go. But look forward as a follow-up so we can get more focused into things like parameters to see how you can implement that here. So keep an eye on this. There's always new news coming out. It feels like every week around Power BI and its fellow components, such as Paginated Reports. So hopefully we see some nice, fun updates to this relatively soon. So hopefully you enjoyed, got a little excitement around that Power BI report builder, and I'll see you in the next one.